We're talking about seeing opportunity in devastation, and hopefully we share some stories. And when I say we, AKA Ed, sharing stories around this topic, especially in our economic climate right now, we could experience it as devastating in terms of fuel increases. Fuel just went up again 12 o'clock last night or this morning, depending on your point of view. The repo rate went up with 50 or basis points, and that has all knock-on impacts. And if you're already struggling to survive, this is could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. However, this is why we're talking to you. And welcome, Ed. And I know last time we spoke a little bit about knowing the opportunity cost of lost sales and taking the time to really look and not to avoid the matter. Um, so, yeah, I'm looking forward to today's edition. Over to you, Ed.
Jacques, thank you very much indeed. And yes, indeed, we did talk about the opportunity costs or the intangible costs of running a business. Those things where, if they actually submitted invoices, would cause a sudden decrease in average life expectancy of financial directors, I suspect, because often those costs are astronomically high, but they're not visible. You don't see them. So, if we take a for instance of those costs, a for instance might be the amount of time lost in a business by administrative tasks that shouldn't be done. So I saw an analysis a little while ago of the cost of retrieving a document, average cost of retrieving a document, and it was astronomically high. In fact, in many businesses, um, if the document can't be found within something like 5 minutes, it's regarded as permanently lost and either recreated or worked around. Now, you know, and I know we've spent hours and hours looking for electronically or in paper a document that we want to use. Now, that's all lost time. Now, it doesn't show up as an invoice, but it does show up in the salary bill. Because if there was no lost time, we would have either much higher salaries per individual or much lower salary bill, whichever was more appropriate for the business. We would be getting the right output that would justify that amount. And that's just one of the many, many, many examples of intangible costs that we face, and how difficult it is to keep tabs on them as your business starts growing, and especially when you're doing okay. When you're making big losses, then everyone's focus is on every manner that you can to save money and increase income and so on. When you're not making losses, either you're just breaking even or even you're doing very well, that's when we don't put a focus on these things at all. And one of the largest losses, win or lose, whether you're making a 40% per annum margin and 100% per annum growth, or you are struggling to keep alive, one of the biggest losses is the loss of sales that you could have got. Sales that were there for the taking but didn't happen. And I used the illustration of the sales funnel. Now, I'm going to expand a little bit on that sales funnel. And first of all, I need to share with whoever the listeners are what the representation of a funnel is actually not perfectly true. The sales funnel doesn't take everything that you pour in the wide end and pour it out the narrow end eventually. It leaks through the sides, and large quantities of whatever's in it leak through the sides. So that's step one. And step two, it's not actually sloping sided, it's more sort of step sided model. So you have almost a series of concentric rings going one within, or discs going one within the other, forming the shape of the funnel. Now that sounds very complicated, so let's take a simple example, and say we were estate agents, which is something that I've become familiar with at the moment. So if you're an estate agent and you find a property to list, you would take that property, you would produce an advert for the property, you would advertise it on the property sites, and you would advertise it on your company's own website, and you would send it out as a database to your database of people who have previously expressed interest or perhaps have bought from you before, and you would wait for people to have a look at it. So now you have a vehicle which says, come and look at me. And we have the big part of the funnel, the top of the funnel. And people view that property. And from what I understand, it is a national pastime to go onto some property websites and just gaze in awe at all the beautiful properties that are available, whether or not you have any vague intention of buying the property. So the estate agent will now get a report which says there have been 300 views on that per day. But now, unless something else happens, that's just so far wasted. That is wasted expenditure to date. Because of those 300 views on the site, if none of them take it any further, then we've only had the top half of the funnel, the top line of the funnel, and all 300 have fallen out the sides. But let's say of those 300, 20 of them make contact with the agent and ask about more details about the property, perhaps where it is, perhaps some specific questions about location or physical condition or size or anything like that. And so now we have a smaller inner ring which has 20 people in it. And then of those 20 people, perhaps 5 of them might say, I would like to actually go and have a look at that property. So we get another circle further down. And the other 15 probably fall out the sides. So now we've lost, of the 300 coming in, we've lost all except 5 that have come to view. So they come along and have the view, and perhaps one of those might say, I like this property very much. I'm going to put in an offer against the price. So they put in an offer, and the offer may or may not be accepted by the owner of the property, and then the prospective buyer applies for a bond unless he's been pre-approved. And once the bond is granted, the sale is concluded and the estate agent gets their commission and they walk away from it. So that funnel went from 300 to 1. And there may not even have been one at the bottom. The whole 300 might have leaked out the sides, and that often happens. So that is in a single sale of a single item, but the same funnel design can be used for anything. It can be used for an entire sales territory. It can be used for an entire sales operation. It can be used for a business plan. It can be used also for a target market. And it should be used there, and rarely is, because a very valuable tool if you are applying it to markets. So we've talked many times about the need to niche, to look inside your um, way of doing things, whatever you've got, your products and services, to see who best would use them and who can afford them, to narrow that niche down into a target market, and then to identify ways of communicating with that target market. So, let us say we have something radical that will help. Oh no, let's take for instance, food canners. So we've found something which will really make a difference to food canners. The first thing that we need to know is how many food canners and where are they? So we need to identify the size and shape of the market. And that might be our big circle at the top of the funnel. The next level down is we have to specify within all those food canners which of them would be suitable targets for the product or service that we're offering food canners. And some of them may be too big for it, some of them may be too small for it, some of them may be remote, some of them may be parts of very large groups that already have their own products similar to yours. And there may be a whole lot of reasons why parts of that market will never, ever be your customers. So you refine it down to the next circle, and that is the target market that qualifies as appropriate for your product out of the universe, as it's usually called. And then you would get some kind of target message across, and then it would flow through the same way. A certain number of them would see your message and be interested in your message, and some of them would want to investigate further, and some of them may want demonstrations of your product or discussions with your team, or maybe even test the product out, and some would buy it along the line. And that would be the little circle at the bottom when they pay the money for what they have bought. Okay, so that's the theory. Now, whether it applies to an individual sale or an entire market, the whole objective is to maximize the size of the small circle at the bottom in relation to the big circle at the top. The bigger that you can make the bottom circle compared to the top circle, the more productive your work is being. So if we take the one of the property that was sold, the productivity rate there is 1 in 300. That's the strike rate that they're getting. That's terrible. Even if we take all of the inquiries coming out of it, it's 1 in 30. That's also poor because it means 29 of those inquiries have wasted your time. And 4 of the 5 viewers have wasted your time and fuel and the owner's time and everything else. And there's risk associated with all of that. So the narrower you can make the top, or the broader you can make the bottom circle, the more money you make. So that's the immediate ratio that you have to look for. The second set of ratios are the steps along the line. So you need to identify what those steps actually are, as I did for instance, a property sale, or as I did for marketing a product to the food canning industry. There are various steps in the cycle, and everyone would know those for their particular business or their particular market or their particular company. And it's said if you can measure it, you can manage it. And this is why we don't count intangible costs, because we either can't measure them or don't measure them. We only count the things that we measure. Now, if you have this kind of a model, you can start to measure it. What are the ratios between each step in this stepped funnel? How many are leaking out the sides at each level? And how can we minimize that leakage? either by not getting it by not including them in the funnel in the first place, because they're never ever going to buy, or by improving our sales processes or our marketing so that more go through to become sales. And each step of the line, just 1 or 2 percentage points change, can make a dramatic effect on the end result. You can do this model and say, if you take a typical sales funnel where you're getting a 20% strike rate of all the inquiries that comes in, which would usually be regarded as pretty good strike rate, and you just tweak each level of those steps of the sale by a few percentage points, 3 or 4 or 5%. What falls out the bottom is often treble what you had previously. You're wasting less and you're getting more. Now, especially in these tough times, and you referred to that at the beginning, Jacques, where
Mm-hmm.
we have increased costs, dramatically increased costs. We're going to have staff who are not going to be able to afford to live comfortably because they simply cannot come out on their budgets. So there are going to be pressures for increased earnings or for loans or some other concessions by staff members. They may want um, free meals, they may want housing and allowances, they may want transport allowances, they may want to work from home and not come into the office simply to minimize their costs because they have to. So we are, the business people are getting not only the direct cost of these things like fuel and electricity hikes, both of which are extreme, um, but we're also getting the indirect cost of that, that our suppliers and our staff members are feeling this pinch very badly and are going to try and maximize income and minimize costs wherever they can because they have to stay alive. So we're getting a triple whammy. We're getting direct costs, we're getting it from our suppliers, we're getting it from our staff. We probably also are getting it from our customers who want to minimize their costs and maximize the effect of their costs. Now, all of this suggests that you can't just run harder and make it happen. You have to be a lot smarter. And what I'm talking about here are ways of being smarter, being able to get your head around this model of the funnel and the actual costs of the losses that you suffer by not having an efficient funnel. You just go back to that property I was talking about, whatever the cost of that advertising is, and it's probably fairly substantial, that has gone on and it's produced one potential buyer who may then not get a bond. So we've got and it's consumed a large amount of the agent's time with the inquiries and the visits and the negotiations and the discussions with the owner and the photographer who came to take the beautiful picture and the cleaners who came in and spruced up the home and put pretty flowers everywhere and so on, and the gardening. High costs, low return. If you're selling a property, you only want one buyer. You can't have more than one. Although it's attractive to have a couple of buyers bidding against each other and pushing the price up. But if you're looking at a target market, like a target market of food canners or a sales portfolio of an estate agent, that's a very different issue. You need your processes to be as efficient as humanly possible. And you want less leakage out the side of this funnel because That is what is going to cost large amounts of money. Now, if we've got our ratios down the side of each step in the process, how do we actually measure that? How do we have what systems can we put in place to measure that? Well, there are great systems around. CRM systems or customer relationship management systems, for one, which can give you this kind of information automatically so long as you put the input in. And sadly, this is where it often falls down. And we start with great enthusiasm, then everybody gets a bit lazy about filling in the forms or updating the database. And our statistics start to become a bit wobbly. And then people don't trust the statistics, so nobody does anything about it. Use the right tools. The right IT tools are there. They are inexpensive. They are readily available. They're easy to use. And if you're not using one of these tools and using it effectively, then you are missing a trick. And I don't care if you're a one person business or if you turn over 2 billion a year. If you're not using an efficient CRM, you are missing a very big trick. And if you're not using information like the funnel information, you're missing an even bigger trick, because you will have people chasing after shadows. I run a seminar, a workshop called Five Biggest Reasons Why You Don't Make Sales. And one of those is the never, never buyer. The buyer who keeps saying, yeah, I'm going to buy it. Yes, I'm going to buy it. Yes, I'm going to buy it. Yes, I'm going to buy it. And in 2 years' time, he's still saying, I love it. I'm just waiting for. And he's never, ever going to buy it.
Those are the worst, Ed.
Aren't they terrible, hey? Aren't they
Terrible.
terrible? And you hang on and you hang on and you hang on and you believe them. And effectively and realistically, what you should be saying to him is, okay, Mr. Blogs, I know that you're very keen on this. I know you want to buy it. I know you can't buy it now. Um, why don't you come back to me when you are in a position to buy it? And just cut him out. Stop wasting time. Now, this is tough to do.
I agree.
But that's got to be done. And in the sales funnel, the two measures that you need is one, the ratios down the side, and second, how thick the slice is, how long it takes someone to get through the slice. So if you're in your sales process and people should be moving from one point to the next point and they're not, then it is likely they are never going to buy. So try. And if you're going to lose them out of the side of the funnel, lose them out of the side of the funnel quickly. Get rid of them. Determine early who's qualified and who's not qualified to do this deal. The same as markets. Man, you can have a lot of fun if you have a nice bit of technology, a new bit of technology for a market that would really make a difference to people. You can go around presenting and demonstrating and taking people to lunch and uh, attending exhibitions and shows and giving talks um, on these conferences, and everybody looks at it and says, man, that's great. And you don't make any sales. And there have been many, many such examples. Determine early who's not going to buy it and stop trying to sell to them. They are not going to buy it. That never, never buyer, you needed to have cut him out weeks or months or maybe even years ago. And just told him, when you made up your mind, why don't you come back and talk to me? He'll feel very offended, but you'll have a lot more free time. to go and do productive things. So, those are the 2 lessons for today. Manage the steps, and if you're going to get rid of them soon. Qualify, all at all levels down the line. Qualify, qualify, qualify. Just to close, I'll give you a little illustration. You know how many people, I was talked about properties, how many people, their Saturday afternoon or their Sunday entertainment is going around to show houses because it's fun to go and see all these beautiful homes, how the other half live. You probably are 2 of you living in a in a bachelor apartment or something like that. And there's nothing that stops you going around looking at expensive watches or diamonds or anything like that. Especially a young couple going around and looking for diamond engagement rings. Man, you can have a really fun day shopping out of that. Even if you haven't got 20 Rand to buy a cup of coffee on the way. So we can waste a lot of time and a lot of resource on things that aren't going to happen. I hope that gives people some new ideas of how to manage more efficiently in this very difficult time where we absolutely have to manage our businesses, our sales territories, our individual sales, and our whole market much more efficiently than we've done in the past.
Wow, Ed, it's certainly content rich, absolutely substantial. This is more than just tips. I mean, it's clearly pointing our listeners in the right direction in terms of just where to look. But such a technical tool that as a sales funnel and understanding how it works and how to maximize efficiency or effectiveness both actually throughout the process. So I must just say, anybody who listens to this and says, well, okay, great guys, you're talking about this, it still sounds very theoretical. Well, it is available. Contact us via the different channels in which we post this podcast. Contact us, and it is standing by, myself as well, to help
Yep.
you, assist you, implement these things.
We are not difficult to find. Just look us up.
Absolutely.
And yeah, we'd be delighted to be of any assistance or answer any questions.
Oh, wonderful, Ed. That was really thought-provoking, but also inspiring at the same time. And thank you for the rest of you who've joined us this afternoon. And this is another edition. Watch out for us on when we post and publish the video on our site, the Griffin Enterprise Development site on YouTube. We obviously also share it on all the other social media platforms. So thank you very much for listening. And as usual, we want to encourage you is don't just feed the intellect, try something, do something differently. So until next week.